Some movies try to make it feel like they're in a certain time period, or at least set in a certain time period. Put you in the mood of the time period that they're trying to aim at. And some succeed at this and some don't. A good example of this succeeding is Turbo Kid. The movie has many shots, songs, and set pieces that really put you into the feel of an 80s film. Like this scene right here. This montage says it all. It looks exactly like a montage that you would remember seeing in an 80s film, or even a movie trying to be like an 80s film. You've got the 80s music in the background, the slow-mo shots, and trying to make the character look as cool as possible. It may seem a little cheesy, but at least you could sit there and say, hey, this looks like it came from the 80s, or at least feels 80s. Now, take a look at this scene from Great Gatsby, 2013. It certainly looks like it's in the 20th century. It has that look, that feel, everything's going real. Until the main character has his drug trip. Then, this happened.
I had been drunk just twice in my life. And the second time was that afternoon.
The music in this scene really takes you out of the time period that this movie is based on. Instead of having music that you would normally see in a movie like this, like a jazz song or classical song, you end up with this weird rap/dubstep song that really ruins the 1920s aesthetic and feel of everything in the movie. Although the music is a little offsetting, almost everything else in this scene does fit the 1920s aesthetic. Almost everything. But we'll get back to another point I have with this scene, and another scene later. For now, let's go back to Turbo Kid. Now this is a scene that comes after the montage that I just showed you not too long ago. Now this scene is great because it's filled with all sorts of props that enhance that 80s feel, like cassette tapes, pink flamingos, comic books, action figures, all that stuff's here. You could watch this scene over and over again and always find something new that'll remind you of the 80s time period in some sort of way. Going back to Great Gatsby, and the point I wanted to make earlier about it was during its many party scenes that it has. Now, I can understand that they're drunk, and sure, people go crazy when they're drunk, but the way that they do it in the movie certainly feels more modern than it does anything else. I'm pretty sure they weren't this crazy with cars back in the 1920s. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everybody was perfect human beings in the 1920s, but I just certainly feel like this is more of a modern craziness than it is a 1920s drunk craziness. But that might just be me. To conclude, so the video is not too long, both movies did try to appeal to a certain time period, with Turbo Kid in the 80s and Great Gatsby in the 1920s. Although Turbo Kid did a better job at maintaining its level of believability with what it has, with its props, its music, the way it was filmed. Great Gatsby did do a good job when it came to set design and making everything look like it was from the 1920s. It fell short when it came to many of the scenes that involved a lot of its music. Most of it was the dubstep/rap I talked about when it came to those scenes of drug trips and whatnot. And those party scenes were a little bit too crazy for me to actually believe that they were a bunch of people from the 1920s. It seemed more of a modern take on crazy parties than it was a 1920s take.